Thank you, Madam. Madam, to start with, I'd like to give the background with which this ordinance was brought in. It was felt that there's an urgent need to take additional fiscal measures so as to attract investment, stimulate growth, and also to create job opportunities. It was also noticed that many countries, particularly in our neighborhood and also in the Southeast Asian regions, had reduced their corporate tax, and as a result of which they were able to attract a lot of investment and create job opportunities. In particular, when the corporate tax rates were reduced by the Asian developing countries, the emerging markets, who actually compete with India to attract investments, provided that we were able to provide some impetus in the form of reducing the corporate tax. I'll just very quickly draw the attention of the House through you, Madam, that the recent cuts before we brought in on September 20th the ordinance, the recent cuts which had taken place in the Southeast Asian nations is worth observing. Thailand and Vietnam had reduced their corporate tax to 20 respectively. Singapore was at 17. Timor, which is a small republic, had reduced to 10. And the other countries were seriously contemplating bringing down the rates. Keeping in mind that the trade war which was going on between the US and which continues to go on even today, the trade war which was going on between the United States and the Chinese Republic, or People's Republic of China, with indications that many of these corporates, multinational companies would want to get out of China, we had all the more reasons why we had to very quickly, in spite of only a couple of months had passed off after the budget was presented in July in this House, we thought it was necessary that we had to quickly take a call in reducing the corporate tax. And therefore, the ordinance, because the House was not in session, the ordinance route was taken up. And what actually had come through in that ordinance? We've reduced the corporate tax for both the existing companies and also for those new companies which would want to start business in India. An option was provided. An option was provided to all existing domestic companies to pay tax at 22%, which will have an effective rate of 25.17% after including the surcharge of 10% and the cess of about 4%, as against the existing highest effective corporate tax of 34.94%, subject to the conditions that it does not claim any tax exemptions or deductions. So for existing companies, the option was provided. And these companies were also exempted from payment of minimum alternative tax, the MAT. So if that was the provision that we made or option that we gave for existing companies, we also came up with a reduction of corporate tax rate for new manufacturing companies which were going to start off business as of the date that we had given, 1st October 2019. A new domestic manufacturing company, therefore, if incorporated on or after 1/10/2019 and which commences manufacturing, this is important, those who start the company as of 1st October 2019, but who actually start commencing manufacturing on or before 31/3/2023, was provided an option to pay tax at 15%. The effective rate, therefore, in this case would be 17.16 after including the surcharge at 10% and cess at 4%, as against the existing highest rate of 29.12, subject to all conditions that it does not claim any exemptions. So through the ordinance, when these reduction in corporate rate were brought in, even for the new companies on the minimum alternate tax, the MAT, we had given an exemption that they will be totally exempt. The new companies, those who start from 1st October and those who actually start manufacturing before 2023, will be totally exempt from minimum alternative tax. So these were the two main announcements of the ordinance. Of course, there were many other points that we also included in that ordinance, which I'd like to draw the members' attention through you, ma'am. The reduction in the rate of the minimum alternative tax for companies who may choose to remain in the existing system, existing tax regime, availing of all the exemptions and deductions that have been offered, will be reduced from 18.5 to 15%. That was also mentioned for those companies which still continue to have the option of wanting to remain where they are, use the exemptions that are available to them, the deductions available to them, and for them, we also gave a provision that they can benefit from a reduced MAT, which is from 18.5%, we brought it to 15%. We also gave a scheme through that ordinance for grandfathering of all the buyback provisions which companies had made. And what it really meant was, we intended to provide relief for all those companies which announced a buyback before the presentation of the July 4th budget. It was provided that buyback tax on listed shares introduced through the Finance Bill or Finance Act of 2019 will not apply to buybacks announced before 5th July 2019. That was also part of the ordinance of September 20th. One other thing which was also made a part of the September 20th ordinance was a budget announcement which had been made as regards surcharge which was increased, was being rolled back partly. That was also included in that ordinance. In order to boost the inflow of funds in the capital market, and it was therefore thought fit to provide that the enhanced surcharge introduced through the Finance Bill, the budget of July 4th, shall not apply on capital gains arising on transfer of listed equity shares or certain units which are liable to securities transaction tax. So therefore, that announcement which was made of an increased surcharge through the July 4th budget was being partly withdrawn, and that was mentioned in the ordinance of 20 September. Further, it was also provided that the enhanced surcharge will not apply to capital gains from foreign portfolio investors, the FPIs, arising out of transfer of any security, including derivatives. So these were the largest significant features of the ordinance which was brought in because the House was not in session, and we thought it was important to bring it nevertheless because of the way in which global companies were reacting to the trade war and wanting to get out of China. And it has had a positive impact. So now what we are doing is to replace that ordinance with a bill, and therefore we've come to the House with this bill. Other than all that was exactly mentioned now and also seen in the ordinance, there are a few other additions which are being made in this bill. So ordinance plus a few more things. I explained broadly what are the points in the ordinance, but the plus are the ones which I'm now explaining, which makes a part of this new bill which is being presented in this House today for us to discuss. So over and above the features of all that was included in the ordinance, we are trying to give some exceptions to companies which are in the IFSC Gandhinagar. In order to promote IFSC, because now it has to become a global financial hub and we need to attract a lot more investment companies, equity companies, portfolio investors, all to come to that international hub which we are building. In order to promote the IFSC, it is proposed that the companies opting for lower rates of taxation shall also be allowed to claim tax exemption provided to the units of IIFC. That's one other feature in this bill which is being brought in. Second, grandfathering of buyback announced on the day of the budget. It is just a clarification that we are bringing, which I mentioned a minute before, that we are allowing for grandfathering of buyback provisions, and those provisions, I said, will be effective for those announcements which have been made before 4th July when the budget was made. But announcements being made 5th or before. But then that clarification, this clarification that I'm bringing now became a necessity because there was lack of clarity. Many companies said, will it be for all those announcements made on that day or before that day, or will it also include those who have announced on that very day? So for providing relief to the buybacks announced, that is, when I say announced, for the decisions taken through the board and public announcements made. So for providing relief to the buybacks announced on the day of presentation of the budget, it is proposed to clarify, this clarification is a part of this bill now, it is proposed to clarify that the buyback tax shall also be applicable for announcements made on 5th July 2019. Another feature which is being made a part of this bill is certain activities that will not be constituting manufacturing, the definition of manufacturing, because this tax reduction in the corporate tax is being made as an offer for manufacturing companies only. So what defines manufacturing? So we've given a negative list in that we've said what is not manufacturing, and that is becoming a part of this bill over and above the ordinance. So in order to provide certainty and to avoid future litigation, it is proposed to clarify that the certain activities which are not in the nature of manufacturing, such as the development of computer software, printing of books, mining, etc., shall not be treated as manufacturing for the purpose of allowing lower taxation regime available for the new manufacturing companies. So these are largely the additions which are being made. There are a few more which are equally important. At this stage, I shall not get into further details. I can explain as and when members ask me a question or are able to comment on it. There are a few other details which we will be able to explain. But before that, ma'am, I'd like to therefore contain my opening remarks to only this much and say that I'd like to request you to allow me to move the bill to be taken for consideration.